Alright, so this video here. Alright, so this video here was put out. This is RikTok on the Fakeologist site, and this show featured Paul B, who is on my Discord. So I wanted to take a listen, and they were talking about. Anyways, just before you know, Rick's getting better, but he too easily slips back into the false witness of death. You know, I know it's an addictive spirit idea that these people keep seeking death instead of the truth of life itself, which is the Lord Jesus Christ. Anyways, so they brought up the Lord of the Rings. They brought up Harry Potter, and the talking about auto writing, auto visuals, that idea, and then a few of these characters, if you just start at the beginning, so if you just go to the beginning, for example, the Harry Potter story is nothing more than the Lord. It's the same story as the Lord of the Rings. In fact, there are a lot of parallels just between the characters. All right, just even that first main group of characters, take them, and you will be able to, of course, the children are the hobbits, this, that, and the other thing. And you'll see the Wormtail and how that Wormtail switches over to I can't remember that little Muppet's name, but anyways, you'll know which one I'm talking about. So then this Tom Bombadil, if you take a look at who this character is, so if you want to know what the Lord of the Rings is at its essence or root, what then is Harry Potter at its essence or root, then take a look at the character that allows the rest of the action to happen. So I'll introduce you to this character, Tom Bombadil, who then, if you then read the Adventures of Tom Bombadil, who he is, then notice that it says 16 poems, the idea of the seven, the idea of the mind. Anyways, you'll notice that this character explores an area and then becomes known by those accept its word or its light as being manifest, meaning what that character desires, the nature around it then will accept or will allow to happen. So then this moves into, why does that matter? What's the next thing idea? Well, the Adventures was released then by the Oxford magazine. If you then notice the Ox, the idea of which is the alpha, the idea of the beginning, or the OX, the one. So then just keep the idea of one kind of in your memory, and the idea of ford, not so much in the idea of just a shallow place to go across water, but more the idea of a crossing, right? The idea of becoming one with, or mind with. So then back to old Tom Bombadil. What he does in order to make the entire story of the Lord of the Rings, or the search for the one, the search for that ring, is then to speak to the spirit of the willow, or the idea of the tree, the old tree. And then once that speech is made, the tree then lets go of the hobbits, and then they can go then on their adventure. So then this character who is shown as the idea of light, because his costume is red and blue and things like that, all the different characters or colors you're expecting. Sometimes he'll be shown as having a purple hat, and then that hat is it transfers over to the Harry Potter series as the hat that decides what class you get put into on the stage. I don't know if everyone's familiar enough with that, because most people who will tell you that they've read those books, most have not, and especially these back here, Tom Bombadil and all that. Talk about boring. Oof. I would say most people who told you they've read this have not. Luckily for you, I've read it for you, so you don't need to worry about it. I'll get to the point of who Tom Bombadil is, because you already went through the idea of where the idea was released from, and their motto being, the Lord is my light, the idea of their Lord being, in this case, the idea, I just noticed that all reduces to 7, if added it up, to being the idea of Satan. Right? How do I get there? Here's Tom Bombadil. All right, so then I'm going to go ahead and search, and then look for the idea of sevens, right? Okay. So then let's take a look here once it comes up. 7, right here. Right? Do you also notice that you're going to get 12 points for it, or the idea of the 3? So now then, what is that? It's some might not quite low, but it's not quite low, but it's not quite. However, if you then take the what it here, it means here, it's the idea of this game, but you can see that looks like the idea of an hourglass. It also looks the idea of a cup that can be drunk from one side or the other. And also, you notice within the story that Hawaii is brought into the effect, that this, as a Hawaiian word, does directly translate over to the word devil. All right, and then also, if you're taking a look at, I wanted to show, this is a sideline actually. I wanted to show that if I look at the full word, you can split it and see two different ideas. If you split it at the M, which anyway, you see the word of Badil. All right. Then I noticed, I just looked that up, and I noticed in the Philippine newspaper, which is out of Cebu, or the southern part of the islands. I know about this because I spent time there. Many years of my life have been in the Philippines. Anyways, he says this is an opinion piece which has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about, except that it does. Once a political problem, now a sociological one. And he says, they call it Badil here, which I presently am. He's talking about Cebu. It can come under many names depending on where you are, or many allusions depending on your wit. You may call it Santa Claus for elections, for instance. So he's talking about just the idea of Badil, or the idea of that light, and where that then light comes from. So then I wanted to bring you to the Psalms 130 of being in your mind, or where you should be, that idea, and then this idea of we, which that's just me turned upside down. So I don't hang with the we, all right? But this is because they hanged our harps upon willows in the midst. That means, think past the idea of just a physical hanging the harp. The harp is the idea of their song, their witness unto the willows of the mist, and that being the trees of the fallen spirit. Right? Do you see who earlier I told you was commanded by Tom Bombadil, who turns out to be the devil? Right? So anyways, and then also they then talk about, it transcribes into Beelzebub, which you will notice that the Jews in the biblical script then accuse Jesus of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub. Now, who is the god of Ekron, which is, of course, as you get into today's news, the so-called Palestinians, all right, who then are of course showing up just to fulfill the end time scripts of course, to put upon people the so-called chosen ones. And the idea of going back to the one, or the idea of where one is looking for, whose light are they to follow. You have one or the other. You have the Christ or the Antichrist idea. You have the truth or the fiction, right? And then when it says that in the book that Satan was made to lie down, meaning that each time it speaks, it will be laid down before you to easily deconstruct. So you now see how these tomes, these huge books of just gibberish, are placed in front of you generation after generation, because the previous generation did not take the time to actually deconstruct the meaning and purpose of those manifestations of spells. Spells cast in the form of a book or an audiobook or a reading. A reading at the old book shop. All right, so anyways, take a listen if you like. This is the only show that's left there. You got the rest have just gone south through the winter. You know, they're just minds are mush. So, cheers. Be blessed. Enjoy.